Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so good to see so many people at the beginning of the new year. And this is our first program of the new year on the Poets Corner. So I'm just going to give a minute while we're still admitting people, and then I'll get started with my introduction. Just so you know, today's reading will be recorded. It will be available on our website afterwards. If you miss any part of it, want to watch it again or share it with friends, just go under events and scroll down to past events, and within a day or two, it should be there. So I think most of the people in the waiting room have been admitted, and some people will continue to join us. Let me just make sure. Okay, we are recording. So I'm Meg Weston. I'm the founder and host of the Poets Corner, and I want to welcome you to this first reading of the year. I want to say a few words about our upcoming events before we begin today's program. So, the first thing I want to let you know about is the 2026 Camden Festival of Poetry. It's May 12th through 16th. Our keynote this year will be the poet and essayist Amy Nzukumatatil. And there's a podcast on the Camden Festival of Poetry.org called Poetry Medicine for the Soul. And on it, I read two of Amy's poems and talk about them. So check it out if you're not familiar with her work. I'm sure many of you are already, but you may just want to plan a trip to Camden, Maine next May. Also, keep an eye out for the first of our poetry book reviews. This is a new feature on the poetscorner.org. We're going to post a review every month in 2026. And also in January, we kicked off the third of our biannual chapbook contest. The submission information is on our website. We've capped this year's submissions at 250, and we've received just slightly over 100 so far, and it's only January 11th. So if you're interested, polish up your chapbook and send it in. This year's judge will be Amy Nzukumatato. And the winner of our contest receives a $1,000 prize, publication by Toad Hall Editions, a reading in June on the Poets Corner, and 10 copies of the final printed chapbook. So submissions close at the end of February or even sooner if we reach the cap of 250. On January 25th, we have a program that's part of our Sunday reading season series. It's called Rupture and Repair with Catherine Larson and Miho Nonaki. It's hosted by the poet Jefferson Navicki. Catherine's new book, Wedding of the Foxes, is a book of lyrical essays. About it, she writes, one could argue that the current environmental crisis is a crisis of vision and visioning. That is the inability to imagine realities and trajectories other than the ones we are currently living. The program registration just requests a donation, totally optional, but it benefits the Millay House in Rockland, where Edna St. Vincent Millay was born. On Thursday evening, January 22nd, we have a craft talk with Kristen Lindquist, a writer, naturalist, and avid birder, entitled For the Birds, where she explores the ancient form of haiku through the lens of haikus about birds. It will be followed by a workshop on February 5th for a small group of people who want to work with her with feedback on their own haiku. As we enter 2026, the airwaves are filled with anything but peace. Our own invasion of a foreign country, wars that continue to be devastating around the world. For me, it seems it's an atmosphere of insanity. We hope that today's program brings with it a refreshingly sane breath of peace. Donna Sprujt-Metz has written a book of poems that are prayers for what at times seems impossible to imagine or hope for. And yet, in all her anguish, she calls upon an inexpressible you. You, the God of our understanding, you, the reader, you, the power we turn to when what we want is beyond our power to make real. That's what we hope today and anytime that we're bringing poetry into our lives and into this communal space. Mark Burrows, who you know from Rilke readings and other Poet Corner events, will engage in this conversation with Donna. Mark is the editor of Wild House Poetry, who published to Donna's book, To Phrase a Prayer for Peace in 2025. Mark will also appear again on the Poets Corner in February with a craft talk entitled The Outward Gaze, Rilke, Rodin, and the Conversation Between Poetry and Sculpture. That's on February 12th, and you can sign up on our website. Before I turn this over to Mark to introduce Donna and lead us in today's reading and conversation, I'd like to take a moment to read the prize-winning poem of Renee Nicole Macklin, the poet, mother, individual who was shot and killed by the immigration police this past week in Minneapolis. Many of you have already read her poem online, but I wanted to just bring that, her voice, or my voice, reading her poem in today's space. Her poem is called Unlearning to Dissect Fetal Pigs. I want to back my rocking chairs, solipsis sunsets, and coastal jungle sounds that are tercets from cicadas and pentameter from the hairy legs of cockroaches. I've donated Bibles to thrift stores, mashed them in plastic bags with an acidic Himalayan salt lamp. The post-baptism Bibles, the ones plucked from street corners from the meaty hands of zealots, the dumbed down, easy to read, parasitic kind. Remember more the slick rubber smell of high-gloss biology textbook pictures. They burned the hairs inside my nostrils and salt and ink that rubbed off on my palms. Under clippings of the moon at 2:45 a.m., I study and repeat ribosome, endoplasmic, lactic acid, stamen, at the IHOP on the corner of Powers and Stetson Hills. I repeated and scribbled until it picked its way and stagnated somewhere I can't point to anymore. Maybe my gut, maybe there between my pancreas and large intestine is the piddly brook of my soul. It's the ruler by which I reduce all things now, hard-edged and splintering, from knowledge that used to sit, a cloth against fevered forehead. Can I let them both be? This fickle faith in this college science that heckles from the back of the classroom. Now I can't believe that the Bible and Quran and Bhagavad Gita are sliding long hairs behind my ear like mom used to, and exhaling from their mouths, make room for wonder. All my understanding dribbles down the chin onto the chest and is summarized as life is merely to ovum and sperm where those two meet, and how often and how well and what dies there. I just love those lines about the mother putting the hairs behind the ears like mom used to, and exhaling from their mouths, make room for wonder. And I think that's what poetry can do for us in this moment of inconceivable tragedies. We also can make room for wonder. So I am now going to turn it over to Mark Burrows for today's program.
Thank you so much, Meg, and thank you for bringing that reading in. That line is the one that caught me the first time I read it, and every time I've read it or heard it since, to make room for wonder. And in point of fact, I think this is one of the things that makes us humans, creatures, human, that gives us a dignity that's beyond the violences that we must endure and those that we inflict upon others. That in the midst of that, wonder might finally open us to a mystery that calls us home, to a sense of solidarity and compassion and community with those like us and those unlike us. So it's a great honor and a delight to welcome all of you to this rendition of the Poet's Corner, and to welcome you, Donna, to join us as the central figure in today's reading and reflection upon this remarkable book of yours, to phrase a prayer piece. I first encountered this collection when a good mutual friend of ours, Donna's and mine, suggested that this is a book that our press, Wildhouse Publishing, should look at. And as soon as the manuscript came into my hands, I realized this is a book that needed to be published, and published soon. You wrote it in the first months after the horrific assault on October 7th, Donna, and began to write what you called prayers, musings, wonderings, defiances, all kinds of feelings in these prayers over the months that followed. And before this book came out, you lost your dear husband of many, many years, whose art dignifies the pages in remarkable ways. So just by very brief introduction of both of you, Donna is a psychologist, trained as a professional flautist, lived for many years, for decades, several decades in Holland, and there met her husband-to-be, Gershon, Robertus Sprujt, and they returned to Los Angeles, where he actually shifted careers from psychology and medicine into the arts. So the two of you have really straddled the arts and psychology. That certainly is evident in these poems, which have a kind of sensitive, tender depth to them that open us beyond the simplicity of quick ways of looking at things to the kind of longer, lingering pondering that psychology, in its very deepest instincts, invites us to practice together. This book has had a remarkable life already, Donna. You know that. The response has been overwhelming. The fact that almost 400 people have registered for this Poets Corner is a sign of that. And as we explore this book together over the next, well, we have a little more than an hour together. I'd like to begin, and we're going to do this not so much as a formal reading with responses, but to weave a conversation together around the themes and the poems that emerge here. Really trying to draw out, Donna, something of the subtle texture of the way, not just the way you write or the way you think, but if I can be so bold, the way you live. Because these poems come from the experience, your experience of facing the violence of war, the horror of the hatreds that are etched through generations and indeed centuries and even millennia of our common experience on this planet, and are the intractable barriers that prevent us from seeing the commonality in the midst of the deep differences of culture, of religion, of race, if we can even use that word, of origin. And so to begin with, I'd like to invite you to think with me about one of the poems that I found a haunting poem that in some ways captured something so central to these poems and so startling and in some ways counterintuitive in the culture we live in, the culture that Christopher Hedges recently described as the Disneyfication of America, the restless sense that we must find entertainment and flood our lives with a kind of artificial light to obscure the shadows that are so deep within us. Darkness, myth for day one of the Israel-Hamas war before I heard the news for R. Robertus? No? Okay. I'm a night writer, and no matter how hard I try to bend myself into daylight, I long for the dark. But what do I know of darkness? My version of darkness is full of candlelight. It's a stunning poem. And if I could share it with others to see it on the page, the first tercet and the last tercet, the first three lines, the last three lines are separated by a very pregnant double space. And the poem has no ending. It has an M dash at the end, no period, not even a comma, simply a kind of interrupted moment. But what I glean from these poems is a tradition rooted in the depths of ancient mystical texts, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, about the eloquence of darkness, the way that darkness opens us to things within our own selves and the selves of others that we need to discover. So help us by getting us started. How does this theme weave its way in your life, and how did it find its way into these poems?
First of all, R is my friend named Roy, and he's blind. He's a blind poet.
Oh, yeah.
And I was sending these poems back and forth to him. And so I speak with him the entire time. And I'm very aware of what I can send him and how I can't send him a picture and how he sees life so differently. And the other thing I want to add is that I'm a night poet, much as I would like to be able to utilize the day to write. I'm better at it now. But I'm just, a witch. It's night. I need nighttime. I need candlelight because that's when the darkness is when I can see. And the other thing that's that poem in this book is the first and the ongoing thing that I don't see what you see. So this is just me, one woman in Los Angeles looking at this, and my heart is breaking, but people all over the world are seeing different things. And that's something that Roy is sort of my shorthand for reminding me of.
Mm. Mm. Oh, thank you. And the candlelight, this image of candlelight in the dark. Mm.
Well, isn't it almost Talmudic that we're forever looking for our keys underneath the street light because that's where
Yeah,
the light is, not necessarily where the keys are. Yeah.
right. Thank you for that reminder of Talmudic wisdom and humor. And yeah, beautiful. Well, Donna, start us off with a poem of your choice. Where do we start with this marvelous collection? Where would you like to start?
Well, I wanted to start there, but I'm really glad you did because I decided not to.
Mm.
So I've chosen poems, and I'm just going to stick with my order and unless you'd like me to do it differently, because it is a poem. It's a cryologue. It was written in order. It's the first time it's been easy for me to order a
Yeah.
manuscript. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
so. And I watch my own perspective and feelings and change over time, which is important to realize because it's just like darkness and light. What I feel today or what you feel today is just not necessarily the truth. It's a truth and it changes.
Mm.
So,
Indeed.
so this one is day 4 of the war, based on a rabbinic teaching. It has an epigraph by Dana Levin and a stolen line from Delia Prado, who's one of my favorite Brazilian poets. I'll do this when I get to the ripped off line. Okay. Um, Day 4 of the war, hashtag we are toast, Dana Levin. It's 7:57 p.m. PST, October 10th, 2023, and I have lived through this day. I weep from room to room. It's taught that prayers said in community are multicolored, while individual prayers, are monochrome. We tinker. We are haphazard technicians. God is what we need, and fast. All God's welcome.
Mm. Mm. Oh, my. Now, normally throughout these poems, you avoid the third person. Here you don't. God in the third person named. Usually, as you've said in your brief acknowledgments at the end of the book, you simply chose the second person you. Say a little bit more about that. Who is this you? This you that remains not simply God as we understand God and often truncate whatever that might mean, but a you that is embracing of, in sense, everything.
There are many names for God in in the Hebrew Bible,
Mhm.
in the Quran. There are many, many names, and they all are an aspect. The Shekhinah, for instance, the feminine God, or God, which is everybody, has a vision. That's a word that is so used and so, strokey beard, maybe, perhaps.
Mhm.
And all of these different names speak to an aspect of what I think of as the holy,
Mhm.
or nature, or however you, the reader, imagine that.
Mhm.
And I got tired of trying to talk to just one aspect of the holy. And so it became capital Y, capital O, capital U. Um,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I remember when we were putting this book together, you and I, with our remarkable designer, Melody, we made a decision that we would, toward the end of the collection of poems before the postscript, leave some blank pages. And there's something remarkable about those blank pages. When you look back at this book now, or when you might be guiding those who've never seen it and come to the book for the first time, what does that signify for you, those empty pages?
well, Ilya Kaminsky talks about how he loves American publishing because there's often these pages in the back so that you can write what you think. So this book isn't any more finished than that first poem.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, we thought that the war in Israel, Palestine would last for 2 weeks. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not over yet. And I stopped writing this book on day 155 because I wasn't being honest anymore. There was so much noise and so much propaganda, and I felt silenced, and I felt like I wasn't writing honestly anymore. So I had to put it down.
Mhm.
So maybe one day I'll have the courage to finish it.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, maybe it will finish itself in ways we can hardly imagine. Yeah.
Or
I
other
couldn't
people.
help I couldn't help but think, Donna, that many of the poems, not all of them, but many of them have an epigraph, a reference to the ancient Hebrew Psalms. And the selections you've chosen are, like so much of the Psalms, hauntingly present and modern because they probe the deepest expressions of our fear and our longing, of our joy and our sorrow, our grief, of our delight and of our hate, the range of human experiences. And I couldn't help but feel that these prayers are your own writing of psalms for us.
That's right. That, so I've been studying Psalms for the last 9 years, almost every week, with a group of 5 other friends. So there's 6 of us. And we've been using a process that you're probably familiar with, Mark, Lectio Divina.
Yeah.
And it has 4 phases. You read together, you meditate on it, you write your own line, and then you read it to the group. So most of the Psalms poems come from those sessions, from me practicing Lectio Divina, which is a Christian practice. And but so it is kind of that you end up rewriting the Psalms, repurposing them,
Yeah.
which is midrash, which is what
Totally.
we do.
I mean, there's so many parallels between the way Christians in the early Common Era and throughout the medieval era that we shared. We're doing similar things with the scriptures before we started looking at them as historical artifacts. And yeah, it was Benedict of Nursia, the founder of the order of Benedictines eventually, who had this practice of Lectio Divina of, well, the literal translation is divine or sacred reading, but I think of it in modern terms as slow reading, as attentive reading, as persistent reading, as questioning reading, as curious reading, as reading that's trying to hear a voice other than our own and let that other voice enter us and brood in us and work in us, right? So I want you to read the poem. It's on page 9 called Shift, which you say is after Psalm 104, which every alert reader realizes, oh, okay, this is a psalm inspired by a psalm. This is a response to the psalm. This is a voicing of that ancient psalm in the idiom of your own tongue.
But it's actually, for anybody who's so inclined, you can look at Psalm 104 and see a lot of it back in this. Mm-hmm. Okay, shift. Once you positioned the water over the earth. Now our own hands fashion the boundaries, frail and briefly reverent. And then we forget our place in things. We think we have become the shifters, but no. It is the water that retreats from us. Parched, dry mouthed, our hands weeping until the water floods us. That too happens. We dust off our divining rods, deploy submersibles. We want to know what the waters hold. We think we want to know your mind. Don't look at me like that.
Okay, this is a brilliant piece of writing. And when I first read this one, it just I just felt anchored in place. I couldn't move from it for a long while. And what I want you to help us think about is the way you, in a sense, you bring us into that ancient psalm. It's not ancient anymore. It's the expression of our own fickleness, our selfishness. Say more about that experience for you, entering the psalm and voicing it like you do.
Thank you, Mark. So every time that we meet to study Psalms, and I love how you say it's slow reading, the Lectio Divina is slow reading. Can you imagine 6 American women getting together and we're going to study Psalms and we're going to do Psalm 1 today? No. There are some Psalms that took us 6 months because it was so hard and sometimes difficult to read and difficult, we could get through 3 lines in a meeting and then we were kind of like done. Because there's so much there, and some of it's hard to read and hard to take in. Also, all the Psalms here are products of whatever it was that was happening in my life at that time. And we're having terrible droughts here. And we think we can do something about it without paying any heed to what nature and the holy need. So that's what it is to me. That's what Lectio Divina is to me, is to be able to bring the Psalms into the life we are living now.
Yeah.
And re-relevant them.
Yeah. Now it's beautifully said, to re-relevant them. In some ways, the psalmist is so attentive to that most nagging of our vices, and that's hubris, the sense that we somehow are in control of everything, including the matter of war and peace.
Yeah.
That somehow we can organize all of this, which is utterly absurd and dangerous, right?
Oh, I remember what was going on here also, is that there was no more water in Gaza.
Yeah. 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 Well, choose another one of your choice, Donna, and carry us further.
Okay. Why do I always choose this one? It's so embarrassing. Okay, here we go. Day 31, speak. Because by now, first of all, Roy had sort of stopped answering my emails. He was like, do I have to read another one of these? And also, we all thought it would be over. We thought that we'd come to some reasonable end to this, and we still haven't. So, day 31, speak. And now, can I stop with this? Even though breath has become a privilege, in the margins of my innocence, I scribble, let there be peace. No stopping yet. Girl, old girl, woman, cowering, speak. You only have everything to lose.
Well, the last lines are so poignant, so poignant. You only have everything to lose. And what do we have to gain? What do we have to gain?
Nothing.
Yeah. The poems, one of the presences in these poems is your daughter and your relationship with her, your concern for her and for all younger people who have a longer tenure on this earth, presumably, than those of us who are of an older generation. So when she read these poems, and when young people have heard you read these poems, how have they responded?
Well, just like old people, some of them are grateful that I'm trying to love the world. I'm not divide it. And some of them don't understand why I'm not trying to divide it.
Mhm.
And it's not like I got an answer. It's just I can only be me,
Yeah.
you know. So
Maybe a wonderful way of musing on that is for you to read for us from page 7, a prayer for the ability to pray after Psalm 109, verses 11 to 16. A prayer for the ability to pray.
yeah.
And if you could see this on the page, you who are here, you'd see that the lines are broken up with big spaces. And they're not random spaces. They're spaces where Lectio Divina happens, where the wondering happens, where the pause happens, that pregnant pause, that necessary active pause that opens something in us.
It's also about my hip being broken, so I'm kind of limping
Mhm.
across the page.
Yeah.
A prayer for the ability to pray after Psalm 109, verses 11 through 16. I broke my left hip the first time our daughter left home. It was decades ago. One pain camouflaged the other. Even though I'm standing at the threshold of your cathedral, I can't navigate my own cargo. How is it that I always think tomorrow will finally be rain-slicked and fresh, everything gliding out from under me, mud under bad shoes, as if I'm not broken at the thought of her leaving again? I turn away, focus on the other pains, the ones of the body. I am before you continually, but not listening, not seeing, not lifting, practicing some kind of mercy, rehearsing for my own reckoning. Geography and time, miserable constructs. And now I have fractured my right hip on the left of her on the eve of her next departure, my own kind of God wrestling. And so she will go. I only have 2 hips to give. I stand continually before you, but I'm not listening. I am dangerous. I am not ready, my Lord.
Wow. That image of wrestling, Jacob wrestling with the angel, of the ways we wrestle with this divine one who will not dance our dance, who will not sing our song. Say a bit more about that. Your wrestling.
In general or in this poem?
Oh, in general.
Okay. I am never, I never am ceased to be amazed at man's inhumanity to man and my own cowardice.
Mm.
You said that I lost my husband recently. It was a year and almost 3 months. I'm a psychologist. I'm a trained psychologist. You'd think that I would have tools and tricks to deal with the grief.
Mm-hmm.
But during this last holiday season, I was sick the whole time. And it's like, I know what this is about, but I can't seem to help myself. And that is what this poem is about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing there, I'm listening, I'm trying to hear, but I'm not listening. And I think that that is a theme throughout this book and a theme in the world right now, is that it's so hard for us to listen to each other. And what I'm trying to say here is that I can't always listen to myself, just for starters. So I don't know, is that useful?
Oh, yeah. I think that, in Benedict, I mentioned him earlier,
Yeah.
Lectio Divina, the very beginning of the prologue begins with this remarkable injunction: listen, my son, my daughter, with the ears of your heart. And in some ways, I think these poems embody something of that, listening with the ears of your heart not just you, Donna, but the heart that we share in this time.
Yes.
I feel like you're listening for me, for us, for those who may disagree with you, may have completely different views than yours, but who somehow need to listen with that same heart.
We do.
Yeah,
We really do.
yeah. Choose another for us.
Okay. Um, this is another psalm, actually. This one's after Psalm 116, verses 5 through 8. It says in big words on the top of the page, explain you, but I think we've already done that.
Hmm.
On day 34, I ask you to teach us again. Ancient concepts, nurture, compassion, justice. Teach us again. We are perpetrators of the unforgivable. We forget. Yet even standing in this rubble, you invite us to return to peace. You say, return. You say, tears. You say, stumble. And we do. We stumble.
Mm. Oh, it's beautiful,
Thank you.
poignant. Mm. You know, I think one of the poems that is a difficult poem to read in these times. It's a poem you entitle Day 6 of War, Homeland. And when I read this poem, it made me remember another Jewish poet, a German Jewish poet, Hilde Domin, whose work I spent years translating and recently published. And the word in German, which the Nazis took as their own word, Heimat, which was a vision of homeland purified of the other Jew, the other crippled person, the other radical leftist, the other communist, the other dissident, to purge, to cleanse the culture of those people. And that word then, for the decades after the Second World War, was unusable in German. It simply couldn't be used. It was Hilde Domin in the late 60s who returned to Germany, one of the few refugees who survived the Shoah and dared to come back, Jews, who made that word central to her writing because she felt that there was something about Heimat, about homeland, that needed to be expanded, not expunged. And we're living in a time like that right now in this culture, where homeland, USA, has come to mean something very similar to, let's just be honest about it, the Nazi view of Heimat, which was to cleanse the culture of those who are not wanted. So read this poem for us. I've given 2-line introduction, but read this poem for us because there's so much that we need to face here that you give us in a few lines. Page 16, Day 6 of War, Homeland.
It's night. At last, darkness. At last, room for my heart. No more death. I beg. Palestine needs water. Jews need a homeland. We both need a homeland. Split or share. What would Solomon do?
This is such a brilliant poem to invoke Solomon. I suspect most of those who are with us will understand the allusion to Solomon, but how did this come to you in this moment? The reference to Solomon.
I don't really know. I mean, split or share, that is such a Solomon move,
Yeah,
when he says to the mothers, well, I can cut the baby in half.
right.
But that, which might be a solution, if we're not talking about babies, but certainly wasn't a solution then.
No.
So, but it's wisdom is tricky. Wisdom is wily. And I'm stymied. I mean, I've been stymied since day 6. And here we are on day gazillion.
Mhm.
I'm still
Mhm.
stymied. But I do know that everybody has needs.
Yeah.
So why can't we, discuss?
One poem might help us think with you about that, about what you just shared so tenderly. It's day 25, and Am I Losing My Grip?
Oh,
In
God.
which you invoke Martin Buber,
Yeah.
that great wisdom teacher of the last century, who mentored so many of us with his understanding of what it is to be an I in intimate connection to a you, and using the German intimate form of you, not the formal form of you.
Do. Mm.
Yeah, to do ich und du, I and you. Read this poem for us and reflect with us on its themes.
So that Roy is in this one. At some point, I say, dear friend, and I'm talking to Roy. Mm. Day 25, and I am losing my grip. I say something unkind to a stranger, and what good does that do? I just hurt my own soul with this anger. It bounces, ricochets, is impotent. Buber praises those who can dwell in the kingdom of holy insecurity, rather like Keats's negative capability, or at least akin to it. Dear friend, I have nothing tonight, just words, thoughts, fears. A poet asks, do you think the seas are angry, or is it the fish? Everything is wrong with that question. We humans destroy everything we touch, and we touch everything, sticky fingered and greedy.
Talk about this poem. This is a remarkable poem. It begins with a moment in your life saying something unkind to a stranger, something that we've all done, and we do, repeatedly. Sometimes we say it with our mouths, often we just think it with our thoughts, right?
Um, I do remember this because we, it was day 25. We thought it was going to be over. It's not over. And I'm freaking out, freaking out as I watch the world get angrier and angrier. And things are happening that I don't understand. And so I lash out at some poor doctor. And what good does it do? It doesn't do any good. But then I thought to myself, gee, if I'm doing this, then a lot of what we're seeing is this lashing out. And and the big problem for me was I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I was afraid. And Buber says that living in holy insecurity, really embracing that, being in God, as Spinoza would call it, um, is how you can emanate the most wisdom and take the most wisdom in,
Mm-hmm.
even the wily kind. And so I get to negative capability. I remember writing this poem really clearly. I get to negative capability, and then I just think, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, wait, I don't know what I'm doing. Roy, help. And and then as I do, as one does when one lives in 2026 or 2025 or 2024 and is stymied and doesn't want to think about it, one turns to the internet, which is really dumb. And there was this discussion going on one of the social network things. So what's it called? Social media. And about, is it the seas or the fish? And I just thought, oh my God. Everything's wrong with that. And then this poem just did its thing. I don't even remember writing those lines. So
They just happen. Yeah. Yeah.
so it was just really a moment of kind of desperation and remembering the tools that I have. I think we've been there before, that we all have tools that we often don't use.
Yeah. Well, the poem reminded me, the kingdom of holy insecurity,
Yeah.
Buber's phrase. There's something about our need to admit that whatever we know is so puny compared to what could be known and what is known by others. And it's unknowing that opens us, not knowing. It's
Yeah.
insecurity that disarms us, not security, that arms us with certainties. And it's brilliant that you mentioned Keats because he's talking about this striving after certainty, about clarity, and so on. And for Keats, this
Yeah.
is not where life, love, poetry, art happens. Connection happens. It's in the unknowing, the unknown, right?
Not
Yeah,
striving after what was it, pesky answers.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, when we were finishing work on this book together before it was published, I asked you, are there more poems? And it was, I think, a crucial moment because you said, "Oh, of course there are more poems," and I asked you to send them to me, and I felt that they needed to be here in what you, I think, brilliantly called postlude. It isn't over. This is after you stopped writing these poems, the numbered poems. Say a bit about that, and I'd like to say a word more too about that last section. But first, you.
You said, I thought you wrote every day, but there's not a poem for every day. And instead of just saying something lukewarm, I, of course, came back with, I wrote every day. Such a Donna move. But they weren't good. And you said, well, can I be the judge of that? You very gently said, go back, look at them and see if there's any that you can edit into life. And I sent you 14 and you took 13 of them, is what happened. And most of them are in the main body of it, not in the postlude, but a couple of them are. And I was really grateful for that because when I went back and looked at that, I thought, yes, some of these are the harder poems that I just didn't want to face up to.
What made them harder for you? Choose one
Oh, I
and
don't
reflect.
remember anymore which are which.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's do Locksmith together, which is page 70, after Psalm 110, which is quite a psalm. Locksmith. You mentioned this Talmudic teaching of the locksmith, the looking for the lock.
Locksmith, after Psalm 110. I made the key. I made the frozen lock. And when I can manage your presence, you disappear them. They are, after all, only constructs. Imagine God's mind, your mind, which has made me into a holy being. Sometimes I am generous. Sometimes I shatter on the coastlines of a conversation or break at our loss of decency until you lift my face again, the long trek back towards kindness. And I begin.
With no punctuation,
Mm.
not a dash, not a comma.
Yeah, they're done.
And I,
There's dashes and there's a comma,
Mhm. Yeah,
but not at the end. Yeah.
not at the end. Right. That's what I mean
Yeah.
at the end. And in some ways, I think this poem is a poignant reminder that all we ever do is begin again and again and again. We're always at our best, just learning to begin again, to begin with kindness, to begin with generosity, to begin with compassion, begin with unknowing.
Yeah.
I made the frozen lock. I made the key. I made the frozen lock. What an image. And when I can manage your presence, you, and what a use of this verb, you disappear them. They are, after all, only constructs. There's such wisdom in this, Donna. Everything we know and think and believe, these are all constructs. They're fumbling attempts, right? At some little measure of hold on this reality thing that's always changing and moving and defying us and welcoming us and refusing us. And here you are with this poem reminding us at the beginning, I made the key. I made the frozen lock. And when I can manage your presence, what a phrase. When I can manage your presence.
But isn't that what it feels like?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And
it,
the quiet irony in your use of the verb manage. It's almost like I read this as when I can bear your presence, B-E-A-R, when I can, not B-A-R-E, when I can bear your presence, when I can endure your presence as a way of, well, managing myself, really, right?
yes.
More
Yeah.
than this other one.
Yes.
Yeah. Your choice of a poem.
Oof. Okay. Um, well, the next one I had chosen, but is that the one I want to read now? I want to read my very favorite, and then I can always go back and read that one. My very favorite poem in this book is really short, so blink and you'll miss it.
I know it.
You know which one, right?
Yeah.
Day 75.
Yeah.
I step away to lick wounds. If a poem is a tattoo, I am inked and scarred by these words.
Stunning.
Mark, can I join this
Yes. Meg, come in.
conversation here? Because that was one of the poems I had earmarked, and it's a favorite of mine too. And it's so short and so beautiful. And I wanted to ask you about it because often we write poems in a sense that feel like they heal us. And you're saying the words have scar you and they're permanent. And I wanted to ask you if you could say more about that and how you are you scarred by the words that you've written here in this book?
Mm, mm,
Yes. This is also one of the poems that came back, that I had taken out,
mhm.
and that
Yeah.
Mark said, no, back in the book. I believe, Mark, I think that's right.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Um, yeah, writing this book, I mean, I'm sure any poet will tell you that writing a book is hard. And writing this book was really, really hard for me. Um, um, I could read a poem to sort of help explain that. Would that be okay? Or Meg,
Yeah,
is
please.
Sure.
Hmm.
sure. So writing through this was ouch. And here's one of the scenes that made it ouch. Day 82, I want. This is on page 49, Mark. I'm spending money at our overstocked market, making a grand dinner for our guests, and yet we can't talk about the war. Israeli soldiers dying because never again, and they aren't wrong, but Gazans starving, needing the basics of life, like water. I need a poem driven by the unbearable dailiness of this time. And why can't I ask, what do you mean? Instead of wedging my own hot and sticky and urgent opinion into it. Why can't you?
It's such a poignant poem.
It was also one of the, I'm just so glad you chose these because that was another one that I had, folded down the corner of the page on and thought, oh, isn't it so true that we talk about the overstock market and the grand din, and we live, at least I do, in this little bubble while all of this devastation is happening in the world around us. And there's a feeling that, you know, that it isn't real or it is real in some way. And I guess my question was, here you are writing a book talking about how you're feeling. And do you feel like you've created a space for a conversation with people who don't necessarily feel the way you feel? That opening that you talked about earlier. Did you did you want to create that opening, and have you experienced that since you've put the book out into the world?
I really wanted to create that opening. Um, it's Mark can testify how hard it is for all these different people to talk to one another.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know that I've been successful yet in creating that space, although I continue to try. But what I will tell you is that I've been very blessed with the friendship and respect of people who disagree like heck with me. So we haven't like had the big discussions, but we share things, you know. Often I thought what was really interesting to me was one friend, a Palestinian friend in particular, who was sending me what they were reading in the news. And it was like, I'm reading the same newspaper, but a different article. And that was super helpful to see that. But there's some fundamental differences that make it really hard. But yes, I would love to be able to create that space. Yes.
I love the way you shape this poem with those two queries. Why can't I? Why can't you? And in a way, these are unanswerable questions. I mean, we simply stumble before that possibility of opening ourselves to the other, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say that I don't think I remembered to say it earlier, but the chat right now is open to the host and co-hosts only. But if anybody in our audience has a question that they would like to put in the chat, I'll try to scan them, and if there is the right opportunity, I'll present it to Mark and Donna there.
I wonder while we're pausing here, the two images from your husband's, late husband's sketches, one opens the book and one ends the book. They're both pencil drawings of trees. The first is a living tree, but one leaning over the edge of a gorge. And the last one is a dead tree weathered in a desert space of some kind. I remember asking you about was there something we could include of his? And these two are remarkable.
Yeah.
For the one which gives a sense of precariousness, the other, begin with the last one, when we looked at this together and decided this needed to end the book.
Yeah. I love that drawing.
What happens when you see it now as the last image of the book? The kind of conversation response. Your husband was never able to see this book. He died before it was published, but he was there in its writing.
Um, well, it's beautiful. And there's something lasting and not lasting about it. That because it's a fragment of a tree. It's also
Right.
You can sort of tell that it's
It's weathered from
weathered
time.
and probably hollowed out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that he saw on his endless hikes. He was a big hiker. And we thought that it fit so well at the end. You did in particular, was your brilliance. Because well, it goes really well with the last poem too.
Read the last poem for us, would you?
Okay.
Crow comes back.
Crow comes back.
And can I just add, because I have my Bible open, you refer to Psalm 104, which is the great psalm of God, the divine creator.
Yes.
But you chose 4 verses that are strange in the midst of that psalm. You make darkness, and it is night, and all the animals of the forest come creeping out.
There's that darkness again.
Yeah.
Crow comes back after Psalm 104, verses 20 to 24. You and I, we have cycled through days and years and seasons I can't name. And I don't know what pulls us together or what pulls us apart. The sun rises, the sun sets, and one day I will lie with you, and I am not ready, Selah. Blessed is the darkness, how I need it. I light the candles to entice my animals to emerge, and sometimes shy, camouflaged, feathered, crowned in ferns and thistles, flammable, bright red, wily, they come. Sometimes they nuzzle, sometimes they nip. I still have work to do, and I want to talk about the moon, but I'll admit I'm no good at writing about her cycles. We are too close, her light, my darkness, and really all of it is yours. In darkness, I reach out, which is not to say that I don't reach out in daylight, but isn't it the dimming of the days that lengthens our reach? Isn't it the blurring that brings, finally, focus?
I remember knowing this had to be the last poem. This had to be the last poem because in a way it's not an ending, is it? It's a pausing. It's an inviting. And then the image of the tree, the weathered tree, will come in the hollowed spaces of our lives.
Yeah.
Mm.
One of the comments in the chat is that there's this interesting thread of light and darkness, and yet the book ends praising dimness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's that gray
Yeah.
area, right?
And it goes
Yeah.
back to the first poem in the book.
Mm-hmm. Which, well, let's hear you read it. We haven't talked about the first poem of the book.
Oh, no, it goes back to the first poem in the series, which you read.
Oh, this
Right.
series. Okay.
But I can read the first poem in the book, which is,
Yeah, let's start with the first poem.
Okay.
Hoof.
After Psalm 89, lines 26 to 35, hoof. Is it that I have had a richness of choices? Have I gazelled sideways from one riverstone to the next? Or has this been a series of false starts, the hoof withdrawn at the slightest snow? January's wolf moon calls her pups into the night, marks their necessary kill. We all need to eat. Even in snow, hoof paused over the water, my heart says trust. My tracks say doubt.
Whoa. With no punctuation at the end. None. My heart says trust. My tracks say doubt. And this section you brilliantly, I think, entitled Prelude Before the Again. Say a word about that. I'm sure readers who know you will understand something of that, but others might not get it. Prelude before the again. What is the again for you?
So the again is war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But the again is hate.
Mm-hmm.
The again and the prelude is because before I step into this, I just want some beauty
Mhm.
or I don't know. I mean, the prelude came after I wrote all these poems, and I just thought, okay, I have to stop. Day 155 is like, we're done here. And the only way I can get myself to stop is to grab the poems that are at least have some right to life. That was a slim selection. And then I thought, well, before I throw the reader into this morass, maybe there should be a prelude. And then afterwards, because I was still writing, I thought, it's not over yet. There needs to be a postlude. So I'm just trying to be gentle with myself and everyone else.
Mhm. Yeah. It struck me
Mark,
that
how did you come to publish these poems? Donna, did you send them to Wild House? How did that come about?
Oh, do I get to start, Mark, and then you can
yeah,
pick up?
you start. Mhm.
So I would never have dared send this to any publisher. I thought, who's going to want this? It's just me crying in the dark. But I sent it to my two poetry friends. I have two groups of poets that I work with every week. Some of them are here. Hi, Suzanne. And I sent it to Laura and Nan, friends of mine, just, in a file. I said, okay, because I'm reading with them, they're reading my poems every week. And I said, I'm stopping. I have to stop. This is how I get myself to stop. I sent it to them. It's sort of, this business.
Mhm.
And Laura sent it to Mark and only afterwards said, I hope you don't mind. I gave it to a friend. So that's my end of the story. And then Mark, it came to you.
No, that was, yeah. And we were still in the middle we're still in the middle of this war, despite what the current US president says. It's not over, and it seems like it never will be over somehow. When I read these poems, I knew that they were so important, and I trusted that the voice that you give us here, Donna, moves way beyond your point of reference, your particular experience, your point of view, which is the only reason we should publish any book of poems, when it moves beyond the orbit of the writer's intention and moves into some space in the wider culture, consciousness, unconsciousness of a time, and speaks in that place with an eloquence that cannot be tamed and cannot be managed. So sadly, this book is still necessary, but it will always be necessary, as you say, because this hatred is as deep in us as our instinct toward compassion. And often, in these days, is the stronger force in a public arena. So how do we, how do you, how do I, how do we find a different path? And this is a book that doesn't tell us what the path is, but invites us to explore. Sorry?
Yeah. Who am I to tell you what the path is? I don't
Yeah.
know. But
But I have two poems I'd like to request if we have time for them.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Please.
Psalm for Day 83 on page 50.
Mm.
really, well, I'll be darned. Okay. Psalm for Day 83, after Psalm 118, verses 1 through 7. I am stilled. Your answers have silence between their teeth. I try to side eye your gifts, not to look at them head on, superstitious. For instance, these friends come from so far, the familiar feel of them, their knownness, they gentle me for a moment, away from the news cycle. A guilty pleasure, the warmth of my morning shower, its steam over the mirrors escalates, then slowly clears. It gives me hope, this rhythm, the escalation followed by the de-escalation every morning. But then I am once again caught in the day's headlines, steam blind and calling out to you in your divine expanse. I don't understand how to find you, at least not reliably, but I do know how to try. Come, you and I have work to do. It feels urgent. It feels like an emergency. But what do I know of time cycles?
I
I think
just
that's really
love the way this poem ends.
Thank you.
Yes, what do I know of time cycles? And yet they're urgent. It feels urgent. This is an emergency, but what do we know of the
I think it's an answer in a way to your question, Mark.
Yeah.
I don't understand how, but it is given to us. It's also Talmudic, it's given to us. We don't have to, I don't remember exactly. I think the gist is we don't have to succeed, but we are required to keep trying.
That's it. That's such a powerful line. I do know how to try.
Yeah.
I mean, what if we emblazoned that in the front of us, all of us, in every moment when we're making a decision or rendering a judgment or fostering an opinion? I know how to try something else, something bigger. Yeah.
Meg, what other ones did this is fun.
um well I there were a couple, but this one I thought was important to have in the room. Day 118, the proper way to phrase a prayer for peace.
Yeah.
Um, so this is the title poem of the book, and it's based really on the Torah and Psalms, and actually Quran, as I understand it, teach about the importance of words. How you choose your words is really important, makes all the difference. And this has sometimes really made it hard for me to pray, like terrifying, you know? So, day 118, the proper way to phrase a prayer for peace. After Psalm 118, verses 25 through 29. What if I ask for the wrong thing? My words are imprecise, and you tend towards the literal. I'm listening to the noise that the hours make, waiting for my heart to soften, waiting for the ribbons that bind me to loosen. And then I might know what to ask and how to ask for it.
Mm.
In reading through this book, Donna, I had to look up each of the Psalms. I don't have any background, and so I would go to chat and say, well, "What's this Psalm about?" And this really struck me that I don't, you both are familiar with it, but it's summarized it as joy that remembers vulnerability, praise that follows rescue but still asks for help, and faith expressed through movement, ritual, and voice.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Wow, it is. All those verses that you chose, at least in the Bible I use, are rendered "save us, we beseech you." And
Mm.
that old word "beseech," which for many of us is a word we hardly even know to use anymore. It sounds biblical. It sounds like a psalm. And in fact, the psalm is full of beseeching, right? But beseeching would be something we could do too well to learn more deeply what it is to beseech, what it is to
Yeah.
beseech, to open ourselves, seeking to receive, seeking to hear, seeking to know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that comes back to holy insecurity.
yeah,
Because if you beseech, you seek. And if you seek, then you have to be open. And if you're open, then you're insecure. You have to
yeah.
live in that place of not knowing.
Mm. Meg, can I come back to you here on this
Yeah.
one? Because you mentioned when we first talked about this book and this program that, these were texts you weren't familiar with, and yet you found your way into the poems without Chat GPT, without help. That may have deepened your reading, but what was it like for you, Meg, to read poems that brought you into a kind of frame of reference that was new for you?
Well, Donna writes so much from an everyday experience,
Yeah.
taking a shower, preparing for a dinner party, all of those things that, any of us can relate to in life. And looking at what's going on in the world through the lens of what we're doing every day, that ordinariness of every day, so that every poem, whether or not I looked it up, and at first I looked up every time I came across the Psalm reference, and then I stopped for a while and then said, I just want to enjoy these for the words that are on the page for me and hear what I hear in them.
Mm.
And they are so readable in that sense and provide such a space, an opening, and a prayer. And it made me think about, what do any of us want to put on a page when we're going through a very difficult time, whether it's grief or it's angst over what's going on in the world or whatever's going on. How can words on the page or words that we hear or words that we read help us through that? So
Mm.
that's what it was like for me to read this book.
Beautiful. Which is, I think, perhaps an unintended thing, but that's what every poet longs for, right? That the words move beyond your frame of reference, your intentions, into the intentions of you, Meg, the reader who has a different life experience, different struggles and challenges and joys and pains. But there's something that touches a common chord in us in a strong poem like these.
Thank you, Meg. That's a huge gift.
Oh, and the gift was yours to me, Donna. And, I don't know how you folks have talked about wrapping this, but before whenever I really do want to thank you, Donna and Mark, for being here today. I just feel like this is a gift of a way to enter a new year
Thank
with
you.
Yeah.
with some hope in our hearts and prayers in our hearts, right?
Mhm.
Thank you.
I wonder, thank you, Meg. It's been a marvelous encounter, discovery time together, Donna, and you've given us a gift that moves beyond you and beyond this moment and opens, I think, ways of of finding a common path in the midst of our uncommon differences.
From your lips
Um,
to God's ears.
yeah. Why don't we close off with a new poem that I had written to you about the same time this morning that you were writing to me, I think.
Yeah.
Strange
Yeah.
synchronicity. And
Yes.
my asking of you was, well, why don't you share something that's come in these days of this week? And you wrote back and said, well, this is exactly what I was wondering if I might too. So to you.
So, as we've said, my husband died a year and 3 months ago almost. And I mostly have just been writing about that again and again. We were married for 40 years and it was a sudden death, and I'm just kind of a wreck. But what I notice is that at some point, the grief from the world right now, which is very griefy, and so much is going on that is horribly sad, as Meg started out with. And that grief and my own personal grief just seem to sort of be meshing. So this is another psalm. For those of you in the room, not all the poems in this book are psalms, but this one is. Okay. This is about that meshing together of all the griefs. And it's called Grief Has Its House, after Psalm 147, verses 12 through 20. I stand here blessing the gates while I try to pry them open. But who then will enter my sanctuary? What price will I pay for my freedom? Here I live in your words and in your many silences, and my own silences, only some of them just. Fair, fear, vowels scattered across the landscape, little corrals or high fences, and it can be cold here. I continue to fiddle with your holy latches, try to let my grief flow out, mingle finally with the grief spinning through our great cities, where too few are listening and everyone's in danger.
Thank you. Where too few are listening and everyone's in danger.
Yeah.
And I think that's a marvelous way to come to an end of this remarkable conversation with you. And just as many are in danger, there is a sense that we need each other in that danger more than ever. We need each other to find our way through the darkness. And we cannot become who we really are meant to be without that companionship in the midst of our differences, in the
No,
midst of what separates us.
no.
So you've given us a book that invites that companionship with the one we address as you, which is the divine other that we see in our sacred scriptures, in the trees of the forest, in the struggling friend, in the unknown neighbor, in the policeman and the fireman and the nurse and the doctor and the beggar and the thief and the mischievous president. We somehow need each other to find that way home. So Donna, thank you so much for this gift of this book and for this gift of this time, and Meg for making this chance happen. And we'll give you the last word, Meg.
Oh, just a big thank you to you both, and a thank you to everybody who came and shared this space with us today. Wonderful gift. And
Thank you. Thank you so much.
wishing you all a happy new year, right?
Yes.
Or at least a blessed new year, whatever comes.
And as that psalm puts it, may there be peace in our time.
Amen. Yeah.
Amen to you all. And thank you, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. And thank you everyone for being here.
Yes.
I'm so blessed.
Mm.